It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, May 24th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking NHL coaching.
Interesting.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com/locked on to get started. You can find us on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, there's a lot of coaching change action going on around the NHL. And so it's important to look at what's going on, see how that affects the Flyers, see where John Tortorella fits into all of this. First off, Sheldon Keefe to the New Jersey Devils was the biggest news of the day yesterday. And I think it's a really interesting choice there. First off, like I feel like the dust hasn't even settled from the Leafs situation and the postmortems on that, and what went wrong and how responsible was he. So for him to get a job this quickly, I think not at all, but this quickly was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, I heard rumblings that they had some sort of verbal agreement. Jim Berenger, guy I know, posted on Twitter, and I was like, this is interesting. But I still felt like the Leafs were going to decide this coaching carousel, and I think they did, because I still think the Devils had interest in Berube. I don't know if he ever interviewed there, but he definitely lives close,
Hmm.
and I would think they did or were going to. And I think when the Leafs struck and got Berube, I think that's what got the Devils in gear for Keefe. That's my feeling. I don't know if that exactly worked that way, but it maybe did, because like who wouldn't be interested in Berube? That's my point, right? So I think,
Sure.
and I think the Devils probably would have been, but we won't know. Like nobody will ever come out with that. So yeah, it's a good signing. I thought Keefe would spend MLSE's money a little more. Like remember Babcock spent it for a good few years. I thought he would
Right.
I thought he would sit out and sit on the deck and spend it for a bit, but he didn't. He got right back into it. I think it's a good job. I think it's a team that's close. In some ways, it's very similar to the Leafs, though, because they have their goaltending woes too. And so that's something where, he's going to have to help them figure that out. Otherwise, he's going to have trouble.
Right, that's part of it too. So, the first part of I thought he was gonna wait a while before getting back to coaching because the Leafs is such a big job,
Yeah.
and I feel like you need time to decompress from all that and do some
Yeah.
self-reflection even before you move on to another job,
It
even if
makes
it's not.
sense.
Yeah, so, that's the part of it that surprised me, but also your point about some of the similarities between the Devils and the Leafs, where you have a lot of real young, real good raw talent that you have to figure out how to make it work together.
Hmm.
And so far, the Devils have not been extremely successful in
And they
doing
have
that.
an
Now,
expensive core too. Not as expensive as
yeah,
Leafs, but Hamilton, Hughes, they've got 3 or 4 Meyer. I mean, they have 3 or 4 expensive players too.
yeah, and that's what's so bizarre about it to me. It's like out of the frying pan into the fire for Keith.
Well, I mean, let's face it, everybody wants to live in New Jersey. Uh, when I lived in New York, I didn't. But now that I live here, I do like it, and I've been here a long time. It's
Listen,
just weird that way.
raised in New Jersey, it's a great place to grow up, so
Yeah.
cannot complain. But
No, but everybody likes to
Jersey,
rip Jersey is my
South
point.
Jersey.
Right. Right. Yeah, not up by the smokestacks. No, that's a fair point.
No.
But yeah, this is an interesting thing. I think this helps the Devils in a lot of ways because I think when you look at the way Keefe sort of managed Marner. I think that helps him with like a guy like Jack Hughes, who's a similar great talent. So they just, again, they got to figure out their goaltending. Now, Jake Allen may be the guy. They may say, hey, that's our goalie this year. And that's still better than what was started off with last year for the Devils. So if that's the case, that's better. And a healthy Doug Hamilton is big deal. And another year for Luke Hughes is definitely going to help because he started to have problems at the end of the year. So, yeah, I mean, this is, again, now more than ever. You go back and listen to, was it yesterday's show that we were talking about the Devils are going to be a team that the
Yeah.
Flyers are content with
Or
now?
the mailbag. Yeah, the Wednesday show.
And now they're going to have to, because now they've got an
Yeah.
coach in there. So, yeah, they're not going away.
Well, I think it is going to be an interesting move, and how the Devils change under his leadership will be a thing for the Flyers to focus on. Out west, the LA Kings confirmed that Jim Hiller is the full-time head coach of that team. He got the interim label after McClellan was fired back in February. He finished the season out for the Kings and did pretty well in that run relative to where the Kings, had been faltering. Of course, they lost in their first round playoff series to the Oilers, who are still in the running for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at Hiller, and I'm thinking they signed him because he did a pretty good job, but also because they didn't have a lot of options. I don't, actually McClellan's going to have a lot of options on his own. And I feel like the Kings as an organization were losing out on options. So I think they did the one thing they had to do and just, extend the guy they had there.
Yeah,
And is that their number one choice? Probably not, but they had to do it.
right. And, you know, I, I think it would have been an interesting option for Keefe to go out west and kind of get more of a clean
I don't think
slate.
he's that guy though.
But he isn't. You're right. I just think it would have been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. It would be, but sometimes there's, like me, as an example, when I go on the West Coast, I love the people there. I have a good time. But there's a point when I'm there for 2 or 3 days and I'm running on West Coast time that I feel completely out of sync as a human being. I'm just not made for the West Coast. And I feel like
Yeah,
he's the
that's
same
fair.
way. Yeah.
That is absolutely fair. Rick Tocchet won the Jack Adams Award, and well deserved. We had talked about
Oh,
that
yeah.
previously and kind of expected him to win. Andrew Brunette was second in the voting, and
I
Rick
do want to
Bowness
say this, though, because
finished
they
third.
showed this on TBS. I think if today's Rick Tocchet could talk to 20-something-year-old Rick Tocchet when they showed that video with him with the Flyers cooking San Giorgio spaghetti and then microwaving the sauce, I feel like he could have done better, because even at that age, I knew
Oh my God.
not to microwave, spaghetti sauce.
That crew on the Flyers was a weird, wild bunch, and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
um,
It was a
some of
great little
the
vignette, though. It was fun to
I
watch.
know. The local TV commercials from that era
Yeah.
of Flyers play
I never got to see him. I
classics.
wasn't, I was working like weird hours, so I would never have seen them. But that's funny. It was funny when I saw
Yeah.
that.
Back in the Prism days. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so, that is good for Rick Tocchet. I think it was the right move there. John Tortorella received 2 second place votes and 1 third place vote, so he came in 12th in the voting, which is really interesting relative to, like, the first half of the season when I don't think anybody was thinking he would win, but that he might be a finalist at some point to drop down, to 12th.
There were a lot of candidates, right? And
Mhm.
so I think the line of demarcation was you had to make the playoffs. And I think
Right.
once it was clear that John's team wasn't going to make the playoffs, I don't think it mattered if he came in third or if he came in 12th. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he
Right.
wasn't going to win it. Like, so, like, if people are mad because he's 12th and not like fourth, get over it. It's just he wasn't going to win it at that point. That's the
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah. I think that is absolutely fair. In the meantime, I think there's a reset right now in the off season where the coaching carousel keeps moving around and There's still a few open jobs. And, where does John Tortorella fit into all of this? And what is the current state of coaching? We are going to get into all of that coming up next. There is no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. And with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy. You get one step closer to the hire by immediately matching you with those quality candidates. And it's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must have requirements. Join the more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at indeed.com/locked on. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 job credit now at indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So, looking at the current state of coaching a little bit, we have 3 vacant jobs now, right? In Winnipeg, Seattle, and San Jose.
I'd like to add one
And
too. I still think
yeah,
Columbus is up in the air with Pascal Vincent. I do.
yeah.
I think
Why?
knowing John Davidson, knowing that they kind of want to, you know, get things rolling there. Would I be shocked if after the playoffs, like let's say after this conference final, whether the Rangers win or lose, and before the cup, if he asked to talk to Michael Pekka, who's a really hot name out there, it wouldn't
Yeah.
shock me. Wouldn't shock me if John Davidson made that call. I have no inside information. This is just me guessing. But I'm just thinking that could be a possibility. Or he's waiting on somebody else, some other assistant that's currently in the playoffs. I could see that as a
That could
possibility.
very well be because I know that there are several assistants out there still, you know, competing that would
Yeah.
be good head coaches. So I think that is a fair assumption to make. Given all of that, John Tortorella is the 7th longest tenured coach in the NHL, which seems impossible, but it's true. Now, to be fair, there was like a whole bunch of coaching turnover in 2022 when he got hired. So he was the second hire of that batch of hires. So
Right.
that puts him near the top of the list for that particular off season.
I mean, he's
But
the winningest American coach of all time, so he's already got that moniker,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. So, but with the Flyers, he's got a 494 win percentage. And I think, like, honestly, that feels pretty good to me given what this
No, that's a
Flyers
win. I
team
mean,
has
that's
been. Yeah.
yeah, I no problem with that winning percentage.
Yeah. And I think that, especially not this past season, but the season before, man, that was a rough go. That
Oh
was a
yeah.
rough, rough go. And so, over these 2 seasons with, you know, uh,
If you want to
a
remember back to Mike Yo trying to get through press
Ooh,
conferences.
yeah. Well, it's not even that. Just that whole thing that went down with
It was a big
with
rain
Mike
cloud.
Yo. Yes, yes. With Dave Haxtell, Mike Yo, Alain Vigneault, like all of that was, I think, a nightmare that I prefer to forget, but we do have to acknowledge. And all good people, just not the right guys for the job at that time.
Yeah.
But that being said, like I think it just makes me think about longevity in general for NHL coaches because it feels like the coaching carousel turns faster than it used to be, that
It does.
expectations are higher and the turnaround is greater. And, there may be, you know, more or less coaches with turnover from season to season, but that really, like, guys have 2 years to really solidify what they can do. And people understand about the personnel, but they see what the coach can do with the personnel they're given. And that's when the big decision is made whether they're going to stay or they're going to go after 2 years.
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons. First one is age of owners. Some owners want to win before they die. They outwardly say it, like Foley in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah,
And he did.
yeah.
Was it Bill Foley? Um, so I think there's that. Then I think there's, well, we're spending like these franchises are all worth $1 billion. And so if I'm
Mhm.
spending this kind of money and I'm spending all this money on these players and everything else, then I'm like, okay, yeah, they want to win, so they'll make quick decisions. So I think those are the two biggest things, and then I think the third thing uh, is that the players sometimes get their coaches fired in these exit meetings now. We've always had
Yeah.
exit meetings. Every business in the world has had exit meetings. I've done exit interviews as a boss, but I can't remember a time when the last 2 years where exit meetings now are getting coaches fired. And there's no question that has happened this year, and I think it's happened in the last few years. So, now all of a sudden that's a big deal. Players have a lot of power.
They do, and it just makes me think about, how much longer the guys who have been around the longest have. And I think, you look at John Cooper, he's like exhibit A of a long tenured coach. He's coached 879 regular season games with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like,
How's
that's
that possible in
massive.
a non-traditional market,
I
Rachel?
know. I know.
I'm
It
saying
is.
that jokingly.
Right, but I just think it's extraordinary, and then, Mike Sullivan is, like, to be make a terrible pun, is on thin ice, I would say,
Right.
in Pittsburgh right now, is the number 2. Jared Bednar in Colorado is the number 3, and, like, is there a world where Jared Bednar and Mike Sullivan keep their jobs longer than John Cooper?
No. Cooper's only
Yeah,
got one official
I
year
know.
left. Like, it's
Yeah,
one official year, but I think he could write his own ticket, and so I don't think he's
yep.
in any danger. Would he want to hang it up? I mean, I guess there's always a point where a coach would, but he's fairly young, so I don't think Cooper is looking at that. So you take him out. I think we all agree Sullivan could be the next to go, but the thing is, now with Sheldon Keefe off the board, who we all thought maybe would have a chance to go with Kyle Dubas, now you'd have to wonder, who would be that guy for Kyle Dubas? And so maybe that gives Sullivan more life again.
1 more year to ride it out
Well,
and
definitely one, maybe two,
yeah,
to
yeah.
kind of just see who else shakes loose from the coaching tree. So, and I think Bednar's safe. That team's still really good. That team, I remember when he took over for Patrick Waugh, they were in shambles, and he's done an amazing job. He's still, in my mind, he's still underrated as a coach.
Right, and then, after that is Rod Brindamore, who just got a contract
Yeah, he's
extension,
going
so
nowhere.
he is going nowhere, and then interestingly, Marty St. Louis is next in line
I
there.
think he's gonna have a fairly long run too.
I
They
do
like him
too.
there, and he's likable. He's young and energetic. And I think he's gonna go a little while longer. So these other ones, they're all gonna outlast Torts. I think Sullivan may be the
Yeah,
only one who doesn't. Who used to be his assistant with the Rangers.
yeah, it is interesting because, Marty St. Louis has the lowest win percentage of anybody in the top 10 longest,
Yeah, it's not fair though.
tenured coaches.
Yeah, his teams have been
Totally
bad.
understood.
Yeah,
Right, and it's so to me, it's like, when are they gonna give him a good enough team to
right.
really
I think
evaluate him as the coach?
right. I just did a spot with Rocket Sports, and I looked at their organization and their players, and I was like, they have somewhere between 14 and 17 what I would call players that could play close to 200 NHL games, or at least longer than one season NHL players, 2 or 3, and so, but that's not enough, right? You need more because it's what's a 23-man roster, and so you
Mhm.
you need more. And so they're getting close, and I feel like this is the year they should hit free agency and get a couple players and help out St. Louis with that. I'm with you.
John Tortorella has a 4-year contract, that he's halfway through at this point, and I think, like, the big question is, does he finish out this contract?
We don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna say most likely not. as far as a head coach, he might finish it out at another position in the organization, but I don't think he'll finish it out as head coach.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I do think that, we'll know about halfway through next season what the answer to that question is, like how the team is doing.
Well, that's
If
great,
they're
but you're asking me now.
No, that's what that is true. That's
If I
fair.
have 6 months in the future
Yeah,
hindsight, great.
yeah.
Or foresight.
I'm just saying we'll know for
Yes.
sure then. But yeah, you definitely got me with that one. But I will say that yeah, I do think it's very likely that he finishes out that 4-year contract at minimum, and then we'll see where the team is at that point because management
Right.
very clearly likes him, and
They
it'll
do.
just be a matter of what you talked about previously: is will the players have enough power, and will they be, you know, do they have reason to not want him around, and
Right.
if so, will they have enough power to do anything about it?
Right.
And there's no evidence to suggest that the players, as a general rule, don't like him. There may be some individual conflicts that we've seen, but as a general rule, there's nothing that says, "Oh, the players don't like him."
There's
So,
nobody there that carries that kind of power
yeah,
yet, but when Matvey Michkov enters the, chat, um,
yeah,
that's when things will get interesting.
yeah, yeah. Which is why I think, by halfway through next season, we'll know. But,
Yeah, yeah.
to be continued on that end of things. In the
Right.
meantime, we did ask you all out there about coaching and if there was any ex-Flyers head coaches you would want to have back in the fold just for funsies over the off season. We are going to get to those poll results coming up next.
It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. I say keep betting the Celtics. Just that's it. It's up to you what kind of bet you want to make on them. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So the poll question of the week was on what former Flyers head coach would you want back behind the bench? We did it in response to Craig Berube's hire as the new Leafs coach that we talked about earlier in the show. And your choices were Peter Laviolette, Craig Berube, Dave Haxtell, and Ken Hitchcock. Now, I threw Dave Haxtell in there as kind of a red herring,
Yeah, you got a
assuming
few
that
bites. You got a few
he did
bites.
4% of the vote. So I would like to know more about the opinions of those people that voted for Dave Haxtell. We didn't have anybody defending that vote in the comments,
They liked
but
his hair. That's what it was.
that's fair. And he was very even tempered, right? Like
Yeah.
there was no
No, he's a great
like
guy. He was
yeah.
approachable. Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, nothing against him as a human, but
No.
and, and the first year was pretty good. But that being said, the winner by, a significant margin as probably expected, although I do have some questions here, was Peter Laviolette. Obviously, he's had tremendous success, this year and last
Hmm.
year, to
Yeah.
be honest, and
Yeah.
he's done such a good job behind the bench in New York after taking the Washington Capitals to a Stanley Cup.
Hmm.
Since his time in Philadelphia, he's been remarkably successful.
Yeah, there's no question. I'm still a little surprised that they didn't go for Berube over him, but it's still a good choice. I mean, Laviolette's well liked here. He lived in South Jersey when he lived here.
Mhm.
Another really good guy. So yeah, I don't have a problem at all with the decision there.
Yeah, I think, it's, it is really interesting just because, both of them have won a Stanley Cup.
Right.
Both of them are former Flyers coaches, but
I
I
mean, they're
think
both
that
former players too.
I think that, 3 of these 4 options did win a Stanley Cup, so that's kind of why I put them in there.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
Laviolette's gone to the Cup 3 times. You know, it wasn't with Washington, it was with Nashville. That's who you were thinking
right.
of. And so he's been to the
No.
Cups 3 times,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
He
that's
has.
really good. I mean, that's like any coach that could do that is terrific.
Yeah, and well, that's why I included Ken Hitchcock in there, right? Because
Right.
he did win a Stanley Cup,
Yep.
and, I thought more people would vote for him because I
I
think
love Hitch.
yeah, I do too.
And
I
Hitch
just
loves
think he was
greyhounds, and I have a greyhound, and so that's how I got my first interview with Hitch. I got the first interview in Philly with Hitch because of his love for greyhounds, and so that that worked out because he just loves dogs, and he got hooked up with a group called Galt, which is out of Dallas, Texas, and they're good people, and so is he. So, yeah, I love Hitch. Um, I've run into Hitch many times, and he's always a delight.
Yeah, and I just think his temperament is the right temperament for this Flyers team, and so
He
that's
would
who
be
I would have
perfect. Like,
voted
there's no
for.
question they would
Yeah.
respond to Hitchcock. No question in my mind.
Yeah, I think he has sort of and he's a very good delegator too, in terms
Yes.
of using his assistants appropriately, but still being the man in charge. I
Yeah.
think, and I think he's a good. He makes adjustments really
I
well.
mean, I
I
still have
think,
a soundbite in my archives of when he was the Flyers coach and they were in the playoffs against the Sabres, and I went out to Buffalo to cover it. And Hitch was asked about Lindy, and he gave an answer. And he waited, and most, I would say 90% of the media picked up their recorders. You know how that happens? Like, and Hitch went back
yeah.
to the podium after they picked up the recorders, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, tell Lindy to go F himself." And I had that in full, unadulterated, basically just flat out, no bleeps. I have it uncensored. And it was just funny. He did that. He waited because he knew he didn't want this to become like a massive soundbite. But the few that didn't pick up their recorders quick got that. And I'm sure others wrote about it. And so, but that's the kind of passion that Ken Hitchcock had.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I felt like he was a guy that got fiery when he needed to, but could be calm and even when he needed to. He knew exactly how to like wield the weapons on his bench to
I'm
make
also
it
going to tell
work in
you,
the right way.
and I'm not a guy that goes to practice all the time, right? Because I have a different kind of work schedule than everybody else. But he's the only coach that I can remember that I was in his office in Voorhees. Never with John. John, you're not in his office.
Mhm.
But Hitch always had reporters in his office. It was like open door, like, hey, come in, BS for a while.
Yeah, he's definitely that guy. I don't know if that's like an older school thing
Maybe.
because, it's, been a while for him, but I do think that, yeah, I think of any former Flyers coach, I would want him behind the bench right now. He got 12% of the vote to Berube's 31% of the vote. There were a couple of comments of honorable mentions that did not make the poll choices, but y'all wanted, Roger Nielsen, which I thought was funny,
Which
but
is
also
impossible, but a great
yeah,
man. A great
very
man,
much so.
truly. Yeah, I get
Yes,
it. I
and
I love Roger Nielsen myself.
yeah, yeah,
Captain
and
Video.
absolutely, absolutely, and then, John Stevens, who's a really good selection as well.
Really another great guy, actually. So when I had adopted my first greyhound, we were at a Phantoms game. And so they had a Greyhound Day at Phantoms game. I still have pictures in the old Spectrum. And John and his wife came up, and his wife was very interested in the Greyhound. I'm not sure if she ever adopted or not, because Gary Dornhofer always also has Greyhounds. I had been at a Greyhound event with him. So, for all I know, John Stevens has adopted them. So, but also just a nice, super nice guy and very smart.
Yeah, and John Stevens, I think, is a guy that knows how to work with younger players
Oh,
and develop
absolutely.
them
Yeah.
really well, so that's the upside to him, so that was a very good suggestion,
Yeah.
there,
All great
very much
choices.
yeah, really, really
I mean,
appreciate
although,
that, but
since you could have gone to the great beyond, no Fred Shero, really?
I did not go to the Great Beyond, this
Right.
was a listener comment,
No, I
so,
know. I'm just saying if the great beyond was out there, you'd think you'd want to give Freddie a call.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine Fred Shero coaching in today's NHL.
In a way he would fit in because he was first with the video, and then in a way he wouldn't fit in, but he's so unusual. He would still probably be the unusual guy out there. So you never know. Like
Yeah,
sometimes that's a good thing.
yeah, like, have the team go out on bonding events, like, at a, archery center or something like
Yeah, I
that.
mean, when he was with the Rangers, if I got this right, he used to have this piece of paper that was with him all the time, right? And for a long time, writers were asking him, "What's on the paper? What's on the paper?" They wanted to know. There was nothing. It was all a psych out. He just wanted them to believe that he had these, written notes that he would go by every game, and it was nothing. That kind of stuff
Yeah.
is cool. That's great.
Ab absolute legend, no doubt. All
Yep.
right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back next week, talking more, player breakdowns from the season past. We're gonna get into some more draft eligible prospects and so much more. We'll have a new poll question and our nemesis of the week on Monday. As a reminder, we always wanna hear from you, so if you've got mailbag questions, a draft prospect you want us to cover, a Flyers player you want us to dig deeper onto their season that we haven't covered yet, let us know. You can do so via Twitter at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russell at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on the Amazon Fire TV and the Free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league, like Locked On NHL. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the Free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.